I showed up early that Monday morning, still tired from the flight back from Boise and the 3 long days I'd just spent burying my old man. It wasn't easy, but I was ready to get back into the groove. Work had always been my anchor, and I figured diving in would help clear the fog. I logged into my email just like any other day. The first message was at the top, subject line in bold, termination notice. I froze. My mind went blank. I thought it had to be a system error, a cruel joke. I read it again, then a third time. It was real. No warning, no meeting, just a cold block of text telling me I was done. 5 years. 5 goddamn years building the Western distribution team from scratch, only to be fired by email while I was still grieving my father. So if you're watching this right now, maybe in your car, maybe on your lunch break, just tell me one thing. Where are you listening from? Drop your city or country in the comments. I want to know how far this story travels, and if something in you recognizes something in this, stay with me. My name is Jessica Thompson, and that Monday morning, a cold reality set in with the speed of an unwanted email. My mind didn't just go blank, it felt like a circuit breaker had been tripped, plunging everything into a silent, humming darkness. The screen in front of me displayed a subject line in bold, clinical letters, termination notice. For a fleeting second, I convinced myself it was a cruel joke, a system error. That's the lie I clung to. I read the message again, my eyes tracing the same sterile font a third time. It was real. No warning, no face-to-face meeting, not even a perfunctory phone call. Just a cold, impersonal block of text informing me that my 5-year tenure was over. 5 years. That's 5 years of my life. A tally that amounted to hundreds of overtime hours I never logged, missed birthdays that became faded photographs, and even skipping my own honeymoon to oversee the crisis management of a warehouse fire in Reno. My entire adult professional life. Every ounce of ambition and dedication had been poured into this company. And now, it was all reduced to a few lines of corporate jargon, an unceremonious digital dismissal sent to an inbox. The email was short, brutal in its efficiency. It cited a failure to meet expectations during a critical operational period, a phrase so devoid of context it was almost comically generic. What critical period? My father's funeral? I just sat there, motionless. I didn't say a word. I didn't yell or slam my fist on the desk. I didn't even blink. The usual morning buzz of the office, the distant whir of the printers, the gentle clatter of keyboards faded into a dull roar. The silence in my head was heavy, a vacuum swallowing up every sound, every coherent thought. My gaze drifted to the small, spiky cactus on my desk. My team had given it to me last Christmas with a handwritten card that simply read, "To the best damn boss in the building." The little plant had become a silent witness to my journey here. It had survived every quarterly shakeup, every late-night shipping crisis, every single office move. It was such an insignificant thing, a simple succulent in a cheap ceramic pot. But for some reason, the sight of it hit me harder than the email itself. It was the physical embodiment of the people I had worked with, the loyalty I had built, the trust I had painstakingly earned. It represented something real in a world that had just become terrifyingly artificial. I reached for my phone, my fingers moving on autopilot, but I didn't dial anyone. What was I going to say? "Hey, just wanted to let you know I got canned for taking the bereavement leave you approved." The absurdity of it was a bitter pill. Instead, I took a screenshot of the email, the stark black text against the white background, and forwarded it to my personal account. There was no way I was letting that just disappear into the digital ether. It was my receipt, my proof of purchase for 5 years of my life. Then, with a strange sense of clarity, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk, the one that held all the accumulated junk and memories. I pulled out an old sturdy box I had saved from a supply order and began to clear out my things, one item at a time. Each object was a ghost, a faded photograph of the team at our first anniversary lunch, a collection of cheap pens from logistics conferences, a stress ball worn smooth from countless tense negotiations. This wasn't about performance, it wasn't about logistics or shipping volumes. This was about power, and they had just handed me a reason to use mine. I placed the resilient little cactus into the box last, a silent promise to myself. By 8:00 a.m., the floor started filling up with the familiar rhythm of a new week. The first one in was Tony from accounting, a perpetually worried man with a heart of gold. He slowed his usual hurried pace when he saw the box on my desk and the look on my face. His brow furrowed. "Jess, what's going on?" he asked, his eyes darting between me and the half-empty shelves. "I got canned," I said, the words feeling foreign on my tongue. His eyebrows shot up to his hairline. "You're serious? What for?" "Yeah, the email came through first thing." I didn't offer any more information. I didn't need to. The quiet dignity of my packing was more eloquent than any angry outburst. Tony just stood there, looking like someone had short-circuited his brain. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, shaking his head in disbelief before shuffling off to his cubicle. A few minutes later, Jordan walked in, balancing his usual giant coffee and a breakfast burrito. The second he saw the box, he stopped mid-step, his cheerful morning demeanor evaporating. "Whoa, what happened?" he asked, his voice low. "They fired me," I said, my tone flat. He blinked, processing the words. "What, why?" "Because I went to bury my dad." I said it without emotion, cold and factual, like it was just another line item on a shipping manifest. The effect was instantaneous. Jordan's burrito dropped from his hand onto my desk with a soft thud. He ran a hand through his hair, his expression a mixture of shock and fury. "No damn way, that's gotta be illegal or something." "It's Northgate," I said simply. "They don't care if it's legal, they care if it's clean." Jordan looked like he'd just witnessed a car crash in slow motion, and then, as if drawn by an invisible force, people started gathering. Max, my quiet but brilliant data analyst, showed up first. Then Sarah, my lead dispatcher, Pete, Teresa, Jose, and Liz followed. Every single one of them had been with me since the first warehouse launch in Bakersfield. These weren't just coworkers, they were my crew. I didn't say much, just continued taping up the box with deliberate, steady movements. The silence was thick with unspoken questions and growing anger. It said everything. "Are you serious?" Sarah finally asked, her voice a low whisper of disbelief. "Dead serious," I replied, not looking up from my task. "Rachel approved my bereavement time last week, then this morning. I get a termination email citing failure to meet expectations." Pete, a former Marine who rarely showed emotion, clenched his jaw so tight I could see the muscle twitch. Jose just shook his head and muttered something in Spanish under his breath. I didn't catch the words, but the furious, protective tone was unmistakable. That's when Rachel Gordon walked in. She had that clipped, imperious walk, her heels clicking on the linoleum like a metronome of authority. She took in the scene, the crowd of concerned faces around my desk, and frowned, a look of pure annoyance crossing her features. "Okay, folks, the morning meeting is in 5. Let's all get back to work, please." No one moved. They stood their ground, a silent wall of defiance. Her gaze shifted to me, her eyes cold and dismissive. "You could have packed a little more discreetly, Jessica. We don't need to create a scene." I straightened up from taping the box and looked her dead in the eye. The hum of the office seemed to die down, everyone waiting. "You mean like the way you fired me by email?" Her face tightened. I saw the subtle twitch in her jaw, a sure sign I'd hit a nerve. She didn't like being challenged, especially not in public. "You took unauthorized time during a crucial shipping period," she said, her voice low but sharp enough to cut glass. "My father died, Rachel," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "You failed to communicate adequately with the leadership team during your absence." A humorless laugh escaped my lips. "I was at a cemetery, Rachel. My apologies for not calling in from the graveside to update you on the Q3 projections." That one landed, a flash of fury, then embarrassment, crossed her face, her lips pressed into a thin white line without another word. She turned on her heel and marched straight into her glass-walled office. The blind snapped shut behind her, a final cowardly act. Jordan leaned in, his voice a shocked whisper. That was the coldest thing I've ever seen. I lifted the box, its weight feeling both heavy and liberating. I nodded toward the elevator. It was time to go. As I walked through the bullpen, people stared. Some gave me solemn nods of support. A few from my team followed me all the way to the elevator, not saying a word, just being there. Their silent presence was a testament to something Rachel would never understand. I hit the down button. The doors opened with a soft chime. There was no applause, no dramatic farewell speech, just a profound, resonant quiet. But you could feel it, a current of change, like a high-tension wire had snapped and was now whipping around, live and dangerous. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't need to. The message was already spreading. The email mentioned a final, mandatory stop at the Human Resources Department on the 3rd floor. I didn't go straight to the parking lot. My footsteps echoed in the unnervingly silent marble hallway. My heart wasn't pounding. There was no surge of adrenaline, no hot flush of anger, just a cold, calculated calm. I wasn't here to fight for my job. I was here to collect evidence. I was here to understand the mechanics of how a company could be so brazenly, stupidly cruel. The HR office was a sterile, glass-walled cube inside. A young woman with a tightly wound ponytail and a nervous energy was typing furiously. This was Amanda Jenkins. She looked up as I entered, a flash of genuine surprise in her eyes. "Jessica, I didn't expect to see you today." "I'm sure you didn't," I said, placing my box on the floor beside her desk. "I came to sign the termination papers. I believe I have to see you before I go." She pulled a tablet from a stack on her desk, her fingers flying across the screen, her brow furrowed, a silent sign of her growing confusion. She looked up, her professional composure starting to crack at the edges. I don't have a file for you. There's no termination order in the system. I was told you were on approved bereavement leave. Everything here says your return date is tomorrow." I calmly reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and showed her the screenshot of the email from Rachel. She took the phone from my hand, her eyes scanning the screen. The color drained from her face. I saw her breathing hitch, just slightly, but enough. This isn't protocol," she whispered, handing the phone back to me as if it were contaminated. "Employees are supposed to be terminated in person, with an HR representative present to witness and process the paperwork. There's no record of a final meeting, no documentation." I just nodded. I knew. This was the moment the logic of their clean firing started to unravel. The email wasn't just cold, it was a catastrophic mistake, a glaring violation of their own company policy. It wasn't a clean sweep. It was a panicked, sloppy decision made by someone who didn't have the courage to look me in the eye. Rachel had acted alone, and she'd left a trail. "I still need you to sign this," she said, her voice trembling slightly as she pulled a packet of papers from a folder and slid them across the desk. "It's the standard termination agreement. It includes a confidentiality clause and a non-compete." I picked up a pen and started to read. The non-compete clause was particularly aggressive. It would prevent me from working in a similar logistics role for any competitor within a 300-mile radius for 2 years. A standard clause, perhaps, but given the circumstances, it was nothing short of an intimidation tactic. They didn't want my loyalty anymore, but they were terrified of my knowledge. I looked at Amanda. Her eyes pleaded with me to just sign the papers and go, to make this problem disappear. She was just a cog in a machine that was clearly, spectacularly malfunctioning. "I'm not signing this," I said quietly, pushing the packet back toward her. "But why not? It's standard procedure." "Because I didn't quit," I said, my voice steady. "And I don't feel the need to agree not to compete with a company that just fired me by email while I was burying my father." "You tell your legal department that." Her mouth fell open. She had no script for this. Her HR training hadn't prepared her for an employee who refused to just quietly disappear into the night. I could see her mind racing, searching for a flowchart or a policy document that could guide her, but there was none. She was a witness to a gross error in judgment, a mistake made by her superiors, and now she was caught squarely in the middle. I picked up my box, which now felt significantly lighter than it had a few minutes ago. I wasn't just carrying my personal effects, I was carrying the beginning of a story they hadn't planned on me writing. As I walked out, I didn't turn back. I left the HR department in a state of quiet chaos. The silence that followed me out the door was no longer a vacuum of sorrow. It was the calm before a storm I was about to unleash. I knew they were panicking, and the best part was, they had no idea what was coming next. I got in my car and just sat there for a minute, the box on the passenger seat like a silent accomplice, my phone, which had been buzzing nonstop with text messages and missed calls from my team. Finally went silent. They had been trying to figure out what was happening, but I hadn't answered. The raw, unfiltered confusion and anger from them was a lot to take on, and I needed a moment of clarity. The phone felt heavy in my hand, but I knew I had to look. As I scrolled through the messages, one from Jordan stood out. It wasn't about me. It was a screenshot of an email from Rachel to the entire Western Division team, sent just moments after I'd left the building. It instructed them to cease all contact with me immediately and informed them that my system access had been permanently revoked. Your previous project files are now under my direct control. The email concluded, a petty bureaucratic flex of power. A bitter, hollow chuckle escaped my lips. They were so busy trying to lock me out that they didn't realize they had just given me a kind of access I never had before. This wasn't about a computer login anymore. This was about a human connection. A bond forged in late-night crises and shared victories. A connection they had tried and failed to sever. They had put a nail in their own coffin without even knowing it. It wasn't even a full 2 hours later when my phone rang. The screen flashed with an unrecognized number. I hesitated for a moment, then answered, "Hello. Is this Jessica Thompson?" a smooth, confident voice asked. "This is she. Who's this?" "My name is Mike Rollins. I'm the Vice President of Operations at Cedar Point Logistics. I know this is sudden, but I've been following your work for years." I stiffened. Cedar Point, Northgate's biggest and most aggressive competitor. Had they heard already? The speed was jarring. "I'm not sure what to tell you. Mr. Rollins," I said, my tone guarded. "Please, call me Mike, and I think you know what this is about," he said, his voice dropping to a low, respectful tone. The news travels fast in this industry, especially when a company makes a move as monumentally stupid as this. They fired you right after your bereavement leave. That wasn't just a mistake. Jessica, for us, that was a gift wrapped in a moment of their utter incompetence. We want you, with a senior director title, a significantly better compensation package, and the freedom to build your own team from the ground up. My heart began to pound, a slow, steady rhythm replacing the earlier shock. This was unbelievable. "Why me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Because you're the best at what you do," he said without hesitation. "You built a logistics system at Northgate that's faster, more efficient, and more resilient than anything we have. We've lost contracts to you. We've studied your models. We want you to come here and build it for us, but more than that, we need your mind. We need your leadership. They saw you as a manager. I see you as an architect." He wasn't just offering me a job, he was offering me a chance to reclaim my identity, my professionalism, my value, the kind of respect I had earned but had been so cruelly denied. "I can't say that I'm not tempted," I said, "but I have to be honest with you. My team, they're the reason that system works. They're like family. I can't just leave them in the lurch." "I know," he said, his voice gentle. "I was counting on you saying that. That's why I'm authorizing you to talk to them. If they want to come with you, we'll find a place for every single one of them. Talent like that doesn't belong in a toxic environment. We'll make it happen." My jaw dropped. He wasn't just offering me a job, he was offering to rescue my entire crew. This was a game changer. "What do you need from me?" I asked, a new sense of purpose beginning to fill the void inside me. "Just your time. I want to meet with you tomorrow. And I want you to bring your core team. If they're willing, I want to see how you all work together." I agreed to meet him at a discreet cafe downtown the next day. As I hung up, a strange calm washed over me. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a player in a much larger game. Northgate had made a foolish, petty move, and in doing so, they had turned me into their single greatest threat. My phone buzzed again with a message from Rachel. It read, "You left some project files on your desk. I can have them shipped to you." I deleted it without a second thought. I didn't need the files. I had the team. And that was something she could never take from me. I met with my team the next day, not in some sterile conference room, but at that small coffee shop downtown. The atmosphere was a strange mix of relief, anxiety, and simmering rage. They were all there, Jordan, Sarah, Pete, and the rest. The group that had been with me from the beginning. They weren't talking much, just looking at me, waiting. It was like they were seeing a ghost. "I'm okay," I said, sensing their silent worry. "I'm okay, and I'm here because I wanted to hear from you." It was like opening a floodgate. They all started talking at once, a wave of information and pent-up frustration crashing over me. Rachel was having a full-blown meltdown. The supply chains were already a disaster without me, apparently. My personal system wasn't just about client reports and distribution metrics. It was the unwritten rulebook, the institutional memory on how to actually manage the day-to-day chaos of the Western Division. She couldn't find the right contacts in our freight network, couldn't figure out the correct dispatch protocols for sensitive cargo, and had no idea which drivers to call for which emergency routes. She had tried to access my password-protected folders, but kept getting locked out by security protocols I had designed. "She told us that you were just a logistics manager," Jordan said, his voice laced with pure disdain, "and that your job was easily replaceable. Then she demanded we give her your passwords." I just listened, my expression neutral. The calm on my face seemed to encourage them to share more. Sarah leaned in, her voice low and furious. "She tried to blame us. Jessica, she held a meeting this morning and said we weren't being proactive enough, that we should have kept better independent backups of everything. But we tried to tell her. We told her that all the critical, dynamic data was linked to your personal drive for security, and she just snapped at us, saying that was a fireable offense for hoarding company information. She asked me to manually cross-reference an entire week's worth of shipping manifests against the freight bills," Pete added, shaking his head in disbelief. "She called it Basic Management 101. It would have taken all of us a week of nonstop work. We told her your system could do it in 90 seconds, but she didn't believe us." They weren't just telling me about Rachel's incompetence, they were revealing their own deep-seated frustration and the complete lack of respect they were now facing. They had always been loyal to me, not to the company logo on their paychecks, and now that loyalty was being treated as a liability. They weren't just frustrated, they were ready to walk. "So, what are you all going to do?" I asked, looking each of them in the eye. There was a long silence. Jordan finally spoke up, his voice resolute. "We don't know. This isn't what we signed up for. We signed up to work with you, not to be micromanaged by a boss who doesn't even know what we do." Their disappointment was palpable. It wasn't about the money. It was about the loss of their leader, the person who had trusted them, empowered them, and given them the freedom to excel. And now they were adrift in an ocean of corporate indifference, watching their years of hard work be dismantled by a superior who saw them as nothing more than replaceable parts on an assembly line. I let the silence hang for a moment longer before speaking, my voice barely a whisper but carrying the weight of a new promise. This is our chance. This is our chance to build something better, something that can't be taken away by a single cowardly email. A competitor wants to meet with us. All of us. Are you with me? They all looked at each other, then back at me, a flicker of hope igniting in their tired eyes. Jordan just nodded, a slow, determined grin spreading across his face. "Where are we going, boss?" I smiled for the first time since that terrible Monday morning, a genuine, hopeful smile. "I have a few ideas," I said, "and a meeting with a friend you're all going to want to meet." We talked for a while longer, not about the past, but about the future. I knew then that what Rachel had done was not just an act of personal cruelty, it was a strategic blunder of epic proportions. She had assumed that by cutting off the head, the body would fall into line. But she was wrong. This body had a mind of its own, it had a heart, and it was ready to walk away, together. After our discussion at the coffee shop, I laid out the offer from Mike Rollins. I didn't sugarcoat it or try to sell it to them. I simply presented the facts: a new company, a better role for me, and the freedom to build our team from the ground up, with their input. I looked at their faces, one by one. There was a moment of silence, a shared intake of breath. Jordan was the first to speak, his voice calm and firm. "So he's really willing to take all of us?" he asked, the question hanging in the air. "That's what he said." I replied, "He recognizes that the team is the real asset, not the building or the titles. He's not hiring a manager, he's investing in a system, and we are that system." A slow smile spread across Pete's face. "You know, I've been with Northgate for almost 10 years. I've seen a lot of things, but I've never seen a boss get canned for going to a funeral, and I've never seen a boss call us all together to give us a lifeline like this." The others nodded in agreement. Their anger and frustration had been replaced by a quiet, determined resolve. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about loyalty and self-respect. They had seen firsthand how Northgate treated its most valuable assets, its people, as disposable. Rachel had made them all feel like cogs in a machine, easy to replace, easy to discard. I had never treated them that way. We were a team, a family forged in the fires of logistical nightmares. "What about the severance?" Sarah asked, her expression serious. "Rachel reminded us in her email that our contracts have a non-compete clause. What if they try to block us?" I leaned forward, my voice low and confident. "I didn't sign the termination papers, and I told Amanda in HR that they were welcome to try their luck in court, considering they fired me illegally. They can try to sue me, but they don't have a legal leg to stand on. As for you, your contracts are with Northgate. You have every right to resign and find a new job, and I know for a fact that your skills are in high demand everywhere." I knew that was the final piece of the puzzle. They looked at each other, and I saw them exchange a silent, unified understanding. This wasn't a reckless decision, it was a righteous one. Their loyalty had been tested, and they had passed with flying colors. I didn't have to convince them. They were already there. Jordan looked at me and grinned. "You know what they say, when a company burns a bridge, it's a sign for you to walk away." Northgate didn't just burn one, they blew it up with C4. That was it. They weren't just following me. They were walking away on their own terms. It wasn't an act of revenge. It was an act of collective self-respect. I got the group chat message from Jordan a little after 2 p.m. the next day. It was a simple GIF of a tiny fuse burning, followed by a bomb emoji. I understood. They had done it. All 7 of them had submitted their resignations at the exact same time. I pictured the scene in the office, the sudden, coordinated cascade of resignation emails landing on Rachel's desktop, the domino effect of paperwork hitting Amanda's desk in HR. My silence was intentional. It was my way of letting them take control of their own narrative. This wasn't my revenge. It was their declaration of independence. My phone rang a few minutes later. The caller ID showed it was Rachel. I let it ring and ring and ring. I pictured her sitting in her glass office, the blinds shut, staring at the unanswered call, her composure finally shattering. I knew exactly what she would say. It would be a desperate, toxic mix of anger, pleas, and empty promises. I wasn't interested. I wanted her to feel the full, crushing weight of the silence she had imposed on me, the silence of a phone that would no longer be answered by the one person who could fix her mess. Then, the messages started flooding in. First from Rachel, a series of increasingly frantic texts, then from other managers I barely knew. "Please call me back. We need to talk. This is a serious operational matter." The more frantic the messages became, the calmer I felt. This wasn't just a simple mistake anymore, it was a full-blown crisis. They had cut off the head. But now the body was walking away, taking the company's central nervous system with it. I decided to take the phone off silent. I wanted to hear it ring. Every missed call was a fresh piece of evidence, a new note in the symphony of their collapse. I had worked tirelessly for years, building a complex, dynamic system based on principles, procedures, and human connections that they couldn't find in any document or user manual. Now, that system was gone, and they were utterly lost. It wasn't just about the stalled projects, it was about an invisible network of relationships and trust that I had built. And they had severed that lifeline with a single email. Finally, a call came through from a number I recognized. It was Robert Hayes, a senior executive from corporate, several levels above Rachel. I let it ring twice, then picked up. His voice was strained, the usual polished corporate speak replaced with a palpable desperation. "Jessica, what in God's name is going on?" "Robert," I said, my voice as calm and unmovable as a stone, "I believe you're aware I'm no longer with the company." "Yes, but the entire Western Division logistics team, all of them at once," he stammered. "This is a catastrophe. We've got backlogs in 3 states. Our largest clients are already complaining about missed deadlines. Rachel is. She's not handling it well. We need you to come back. We'll offer you a promotion, a significant raise, whatever you want. We can make this right." "I appreciate the offer, Robert," I said, my voice betraying nothing, "but I've already moved on, and so has my team." "Jessica, please." he pleaded, his voice cracking with the strain. "We're not just offering you your job back, we're offering you the world. Just name your price." I paused for a moment, letting the silence hang in the air, a silent judgment on their past actions. "My price isn't money, Robert," I finally said. "My price is the kind of respect that can't be bought with a desperate promotion. And you already spent all of yours." I hung up the phone. A few minutes later, another message came through, this time from Sam Garrison, the regional director. It was short and to the point. "They all quit. You broke the department. We're in total freefall." I read the message, a small, knowing smile on my face. It wasn't about breaking anything. It was about showing them what they had truly broken: the trust and loyalty of a team that had once been unbreakable. They had fired me for grieving. But in doing so, they had given me the ultimate power, the power to walk away with my entire team and leave them with nothing but the fallout of their own arrogance. The moment I hung up on Robert Hayes, the world around me seemed to reboot. The phone still vibrated slightly in my hand, a silent signal of an ending. But it wasn't a sad ending. It was the end of something that had grown rotten. My place was no longer in a system where loyalty was treated as a weakness. I looked at the final message from Sam Garrison, the words, "You broke the department. We're in total freefall," echoing like a reluctant admission of defeat. It wasn't an accusation. It was the undeniable evidence of their loss. I hadn't broken anything. I had only held up a mirror, forcing them to see that they had already destroyed the most important asset they ever had, a collective that could not, and would not, be broken. The next morning, I drove to the downtown coffee shop, a place far from the shadow of the Northgate offices. The atmosphere was cozy, with just enough chatter to feel anonymous, perfect for the meeting that would define my future. Mike Rollins was already there, sitting in a secluded corner, looking more like an old friend than a high-powered executive. He stood up when I walked in, offering a warm and genuine smile. "Jessica, it's a pleasure to finally meet you in person. I've been following your work for quite some time." We ordered coffee and sat down. Our conversation didn't start with numbers or charts. Instead, Mike asked me about my experiences at Northgate, how I built my team from scratch, and what I learned from my time there. "I'm not interested in the final numbers on your reports," he said, his voice full of respect. "I can read those online. I'm interested in how you got them. And I want to understand what kept that entire team with you when so many others would have walked away a long time ago." I told him everything, holding back no details, from the first days when we started with nothing but an empty warehouse and a handful of ambitious ideas, to the night we spent on a conference call rerouting 100 trucks to handle the fire in Reno. I spoke about how my team and I worked as a unified front, how we trusted each other implicitly, and how I always tried to shield them from the senseless, morale-crushing policies of corporate leadership. "We weren't just employees," I said. "We were a single, cohesive unit." Mike listened intently, nodding occasionally. When I told him about the frantic phone call from Robert Hayes, he gave a knowing, almost wry smile. "I'm not surprised. Their offer was just a desperate attempt to plug a hole in a sinking ship. They thought they could buy loyalty. They didn't understand it has to be built, piece by piece, with years of hard work, sweat, and mutual respect." It was then that I knew I had found a place that truly valued what I had built. At the end of our meeting, Mike handed me a sleek leather-bound document. "This is our official proposal. We're not just offering you a higher position as Director of Western Operations. We're offering you the chance to build a new division from the ground up, your way, with your principles. We'll give you all the resources you need, and when you're ready. I've already got provisional offers drafted for your 7 core team members. I trust them because they trusted you." Holding the document, I felt an immense sense of relief and vindication wash over me. This wasn't just a new job. This was an opportunity to reclaim what I had lost and build something better, stronger, and more humane. When I got home, I opened my laptop and drafted an email. The subject line was short and to the point: "A new beginning. We're in the body." I simply attached the 7 provisional offers from Cedar Point. I sent it to my old team. Less than 5 minutes later, a reply came in from Jordan. It was a single sentence. "We're waiting for you, boss." I read it, a bright, triumphant smile spreading across my face. It was never about revenge. It was about what I had built: a legacy not of profits and losses, but of loyalty and respect. And I had taken it all with me. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need an explanation from Northgate. I just needed to know that I had won. And that winning wasn't about tearing someone else down, but about standing tall on my own, with the people who had always stood with me. We were about to build something great again. And this time, no one could take it away.